Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of the most famous tales from Greek mythology, the story of Narcissus. Picture this, you're standing on the edge of a still, serene pond. The water's so clear, it mirrors the world around you perfectly. But there's something more, something captivating in the reflection staring back at you. It's you. Not just anyone, but your own image. You know that feeling when you catch yourself in the mirror and can't help but look a second time? Imagine that, but multiplied by 1,000. That's Narcissus. He wasn't just staring, he was lost. Narcissus wasn't your average mortal, he was strikingly beautiful, and everyone around him knew it. He had no shortage of admirers, but none of them could compete with what he truly craved, himself. The problem began when Narcissus came across a shimmering pond one fateful day. At first, it was a passing glance. But then, he couldn't stop. His reflection mesmerized him, and that was the beginning of a tragic journey. You probably won't survive this obsession, nobody could. His fixation deepened day by day, turning into an almost obsessive trance. But here's the twist, Narcissus didn't even know it was his own image. He thought it was another beautiful soul, someone worthy of his love. He gazed, entranced, unable to tear himself away, convinced that he had found his soulmate. Historians still argue whether Narcissus was truly in love with his image or if it was simply a deep, uncontrollable attraction to the idea of love itself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. I'm curious how far this myth reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As Narcissus lingered by that pond, he wasn't just admiring his reflection, he was caught in a spell. The water, so clear and still, mirrored his beauty so perfectly that he couldn't distinguish between reality and reflection. Every time he reached out to touch the water, it rippled, leaving him frustrated and helpless. It was as if the pond itself was mocking him, showing him something he could never have. The more he looked, the more obsessed he became, and the deeper he fell into this captivating, self-centered trance. You can almost imagine the longing in his eyes, he yearned to touch, to feel, but every attempt was futile. With every passing moment, his obsession grew, and so did his demise. As he sat there day after day, he slowly began to waste away. His beauty faded, consumed by the very thing that once defined him. Yet, he couldn't stop, his reflection was everything. But as Narcissus became increasingly captivated by his own reflection, something else was happening, something far quieter, but just as tragic. Echo, a mountain nymph, watched from a distance. She wasn't just any nymph, she was unique in a way that made her story even sadder. Echo had been cursed by Hera, the queen of the gods, to only repeat the last words spoken to her. She couldn't speak freely, she could only mirror others. Imagine how frustrating that must have been. But Echo, in her own way, was in love with Narcissus, entranced by his beauty, too. But Narcissus didn't see her. Oh, he didn't even know she was there, let alone feel the depth of her longing. Every time she tried to speak to him, she could only echo his words. "Is anyone here?" he would call, and she could only respond with, "Here." "Come to me," he might cry, and she could only whisper, "Come." It's almost as if she was doomed to be a mere shadow in his life, never able to break free from the curse that had bound her. But Echo was relentless. She would hide behind trees and rocks, watching Narcissus from afar, hoping that somehow, he would hear her true feelings, even though they were trapped in the mirror of her voice. Historians still argue whether Echo's love for Narcissus was genuine or just the result of her own tragic fate. Was it an act of true devotion, or was it simply the curse of being forced to love someone who would never truly know you? Either way, Echo's heartache grew with every passing day. She would never have the words to tell him how she felt, and as time wore on, she began to fade, both physically and emotionally. Her beauty, too, withered, leaving her an echo of what she once was. The gods, with all their power, seemed to revel in Echo's suffering, watching as her silent love turned to despair. Her curse, both cruel and poetic, gave her no relief. Was it really fair for a goddess to impose such suffering on someone so innocent? But for Echo, the most painful part of it all was knowing that she would never be able to get Narcissus's attention. And so, she faded away into the mountains, her form becoming a mere whisper in the winds. All that remained was her voice, echoing endlessly in the empty spaces of the world. There's something hauntingly beautiful about the idea that love, when unspoken, can be so powerful that it lingers forever, an echo of what could have been. As Echo's voice faded into the mountains, the gods above were watching with a kind of detached amusement. But they weren't just sitting idly by. No, they had already set their plan in motion. Narcissus's vanity had gone too far, and his indifference to the people around him was becoming more than a small flaw, it was a divine offense. Something had to be done. The gods, in their infinite wisdom, decided to punish Narcissus, but not in the way you might expect. They didn't strike him down with thunder or send a beast to tear him apart. Instead, they gave him exactly what he wanted, love. But there was a catch, it was to be love he could never possess. In an almost poetic twist, the gods cursed Narcissus to fall in love with his own reflection. It wasn't a cruel punishment in the traditional sense. After all, what could be more fitting for a man so obsessed with his own image than to be trapped in it forever? Narcissus, blinded by his own beauty, didn't realize that the love he felt was an illusion, an empty cycle of admiration that could never be fulfilled. Historians still argue whether this divine punishment was truly just. Was Narcissus's vanity so terrible that he deserved this eternal torment? Or was he simply a victim of his own nature? It's easy to see how one could fall into a trap of vanity, especially in a world so deeply obsessed with appearance, but this wasn't the world we live in. This was ancient Greece, where gods meddled with mortals like pawns in a game of divine chess. As Narcissus continued to gaze at the water, lost in his own reflection, the deeper he fell into despair. He tried to embrace the figure in the water, reaching out to touch it, but every time he did, the reflection would ripple, mocking him. He couldn't hold it. He couldn't love it. It was him. He was in love with himself, and yet he could never possess that love. The deeper his yearning became, the more he withered away, his body deteriorating from neglect. The most heartbreaking part of all. Narcissus didn't realize what had happened to him. He couldn't see that he was already trapped in his own prison, a world of endless reflection where love, real love, could never exist. His punishment, unlike any other, was to live out the rest of his life in eternal longing for something he could never touch. This was the power of the gods, subtle, ironic, and tragic. The gods didn't need to send monsters or natural disasters to punish Narcissus. All they needed to do was give him what he desired most, a reflection of his own beauty. And that was enough. Narcissus's obsession deepened with each passing day. The longer he stared at his reflection, the more it consumed him. His skin, once vibrant and glowing, began to lose its color. His eyes, full of youthful sparkle, grew dim and weary. Yet he couldn't stop himself. Every time he looked into the water, he saw the same thing, the perfect image of beauty, untouched and flawless. It was a love so pure in its devotion, yet so empty in its reality. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes, the things we love the most are the very things that slowly destroy us. In his quest for eternal beauty, Narcissus had lost his ability to love anything else. His world had become a mirror, and in that mirror, all he could see was himself. He had no room for anyone else, not for Echo, not for any of the admirers who had once adored him. His vanity had created a bubble around him, one that he couldn't escape, no matter how much he wanted to. The myths of ancient Greece are full of tragic heroes, but Narcissus's story is perhaps the most relatable. How often do we get trapped in our own reflections, whether it's the way we look, the way we are perceived, or the way we think others see us? It's not just a story about a man and his reflection, it's a story about the danger of living only for ourselves. Narcissus's downfall wasn't in his appearance, it was in his inability to see beyond it. Historians still argue whether Narcissus was aware of the damage he was doing to himself. Did he know he was wasting away, or was he so blinded by his reflection that he didn't even realize his body was deteriorating? Either way, it was clear that the love he had for himself was an insidious kind of affection. It wasn't nurturing. It wasn't fulfilling. It was an endless cycle of self-absorption, leading only to his destruction. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Narcissus remained by the pond. The only company he had was his own image, a reflection that grew more distant and unattainable with each passing moment. His once pristine body began to waste away, but still, he gazed. Still, he reached. Still, he yearned. And in the end, that was all that was left of him, a young man, in love with a fleeting image, unable to escape the prison of his own desires. The tragic beauty of Narcissus's story is that he never even realized that he had everything he wanted. He was in love with himself, but in his obsession, he lost the ability to love. He was stuck in a dream, one where every time he reached for love, it slipped through his fingers. And then, as it often happens in Greek mythology, Narcissus's fate took its final turn. His body, weakened and frail from his unyielding obsession, finally gave out. But the gods, not satisfied with his physical decay alone, decided that his end would be as poetic as his life had been tragic. Narcissus didn't die in a dramatic battle or tragic accident. No, his demise was slower, more symbolic. As his body wasted away, a flower began to bloom in his place, springing up where he had been gazing. It wasn't just any flower, though. The gods chose the Narcissus flower, a symbol of beauty and death, to mark the spot where Narcissus had once sat, forever staring at his reflection. The flower itself was beautiful, delicate, with a long, slender stem and petals that seemed to glow in the sunlight. It was a fitting tribute to Narcissus's life, full of beauty, but ultimately fleeting. And so, the Narcissus became a symbol of vanity, a reminder of the dangers of excessive self-love. Every time someone gazed upon that flower, they were reminded of the young man who had wasted away because he could not let go of his own image. Historians still argue whether the transformation of Narcissus into a flower was a form of punishment or simply the god's way of preserving his beauty for eternity. Was it a cruel twist of fate that his beauty would now be immortalized in a flower, forever unreachable? Or was it a bittersweet reward, a way of giving him something beautiful when he had nothing left? What's interesting about this transformation is how it reflects the central theme of Narcissus's story, love that cannot be fulfilled. The flower, beautiful as it is, can never be touched. It grows and blooms, but it is out of reach. Just like Narcissus's love for his reflection, the flower is a symbol of something unattainable. It's as if the gods were reminding humanity that beauty, while captivating, can be both a blessing and a curse. The Narcissus flower is beautiful, but it is rooted in the same soil as Narcissus's tragedy. As time passed, the legend of Narcissus spread, and with it, the warning. The Narcissus flower became a powerful symbol in both ancient and modern cultures, representing not only beauty but also the dangers of obsession and vanity. Every time someone sees that flower, they are reminded of Narcissus, of his tragic love for himself, and the cost of that love. But the story of Narcissus doesn't end with his transformation into a flower. The myth continues to echo through time, a reminder of the dangers of getting lost in our own reflections. And as you lie here, drifting off to sleep, think about the times when you've been too caught up in your own thoughts, your own desires. Narcissus was a warning, but also a reflection of ourselves. We all have moments when we stare into the mirror a little too long, when we get lost in our own image. But remember, it's not the reflection that matters. It's the life we live beyond it. But let's not forget that Narcissus wasn't the only one caught in this web of love and fate. The gods had their role in all of this, but they weren't the only ones pulling the strings. It's easy to blame the gods for everything. After all, they had the power, they had the control, but there's another layer to this story. The question still lingers in the air: did Narcissus deserve this punishment? Was he simply a victim of the gods' whims, or was he, in his own way, responsible for his own downfall? Historians still argue whether Narcissus's obsession with his reflection was entirely his fault. Some say he was merely a victim of his own beauty, unable to escape the world's constant admiration. Others believe he was a cautionary tale, showing the dangers of vanity and self-obsession. But one thing is clear, Narcissus wasn't the first person to become consumed by their own image, and he certainly won't be the last. In ancient Greece, narcissism was considered a flaw of character, an inability to see beyond oneself. It was a vice, not just a condition. Narcissus was the embodiment of that flaw, and the gods, in their wisdom, chose to make him an example. They didn't create his vanity, but they certainly decided to punish it in a way that would make a lasting impact. By making him fall in love with his own reflection, the gods showed just how destructive vanity can be, not just to the individual, but to everyone around them. Think about it, Narcissus's vanity didn't just destroy him. It destroyed those who loved him, too. Echo's love, pure and true, went unnoticed, as did the affections of countless others. Narcissus's self-absorption became the center of his world, pushing everyone else aside. It wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a societal one. His inability to love anything but himself left a trail of broken hearts behind him. And even though Echo faded into the mountains, her voice still echoed through the valleys, reminding everyone of the price of unrequited love. The gods may have cursed Narcissus, but in many ways, it was his own choices that led him down this path. He chose to ignore the love of others. He chose to turn away from connection and community. And in the end, he chose to stare into a reflection that only mirrored his emptiness. The gods simply gave him what he thought he wanted, and in doing so, they made him face the ultimate truth: self-love, when taken too far, can be just as destructive as any external enemy. As we look at Narcissus's story, we're reminded of the importance of balance. It's not wrong to love yourself, after all, self-care is essential. But there's a line. Narcissus crossed it, and in doing so, he lost everything. His beauty, his youth, his life, all vanished into the depths of a pond, replaced by a flower that could never be touched. It's a haunting thought, isn't it? To spend your life chasing something that can never be yours, something that doesn't even exist outside of your own mind. Narcissus's tragedy is our reminder: don't let vanity rob you of the real things that matter. As the legend of Narcissus continued to spread, his transformation into the flower became more than just a symbol of vanity, it became a cautionary tale woven into the fabric of Greek culture. The Narcissus flower, delicate and beautiful, bloomed year after year where Narcissus had perished, a reminder that even the most stunning beauty can be fleeting and ultimately out of reach. It's an image that endures, this flower, swaying in the breeze, beautiful yet unreachable, just like Narcissus's love for himself. But let's pause for a moment and think about the nature of transformation in Greek mythology. It's not unusual for the gods to turn a person into something else, whether it's a tree, a bird, or even a flower. These transformations are meant to serve as metaphors, but also as warnings. Narcissus, in his final form, was no longer the beautiful young man who captivated the world with his appearance. He was a flower, his beauty now defined by fragility, unattainability, and the passage of time. It was as if the gods were reminding everyone that beauty, when consumed by vanity, leads only to emptiness. It fades, it wilts, and all that's left is a trace of what once was. Historians still argue whether Narcissus's transformation was a final act of divine cruelty or a moment of poetic justice. Some say that the gods, in their wisdom, wanted to preserve his beauty, even if it could never be touched or loved again. Others argue that turning him into a flower was the ultimate punishment, a fate worse than death, where his beauty would live on, but his existence would be as hollow as the reflection that caused his demise. But beyond the gods' intentions, there's something about Narcissus's story that resonates with us even today. It's easy to see him as a tragic figure, but in many ways, his story is a reflection of our own struggles with vanity, self-obsession, and the constant search for validation. The world today is full of mirrors, both literal and metaphorical, social media, advertisements, and even our own self-reflection. Narcissus's tragedy is not just a tale of ancient Greece, it's something we all grapple with in the modern world. We live in a society that often values appearance over substance, and Narcissus's story serves as a reminder of the dangers of becoming too enamored with our own image. In the pursuit of perfection, we can lose sight of what truly matters, the relationships we build, the connections we form, and the love we give and receive. Narcissus had it all, the beauty, the admiration, the allure, but he couldn't see beyond his own reflection. He was so fixated on what he saw in the water that he couldn't realize that there was a world beyond the surface, a world full of real love, real connection, and real fulfillment. Isn't it true that sometimes we all get caught in that trap? We chase after things that seem perfect, that promise happiness and fulfillment, only to find that they lead us down a path of emptiness. Narcissus's story is timeless because it speaks to the very heart of what it means to be human. It's about seeking love and acceptance, only to find that the love we're searching for has to start within ourselves, but not in the form of self-obsession. True love, whether it's for ourselves or for others, comes from seeing beyond the surface, from understanding that there is more to life than just our own reflection. And so, the narcissus flower blooms year after year, a reminder of the dangers of vanity and the importance of balance. It serves as a tribute to Narcissus, but also as a lesson to us all. In the pursuit of love, beauty, and self-acceptance, we must remember that the truest form of beauty is found not in the reflection of the mirror, but in the depth of our hearts. As Narcissus's tale continued to echo through time, it became more than just a myth, it became a reflection of human nature. Over centuries, the story has been told and retold, transforming along the way, but the core message remains the same: obsession with one's own image, unchecked and unchecked, can destroy everything. Narcissus's story serves as a mirror for each generation, reminding us of the dangers of getting lost in our own reflections, both literal and metaphorical. The narcissus flower, forever tied to his tragic fate, bloomed in the fields of Greek mythology and beyond. It was a symbol of beauty, but it was also a symbol of death. The image of the delicate petals swaying in the breeze evokes a sense of sorrow. After all, it wasn't just the flower's beauty that made it tragic, it was the fact that it had come from the very person who was too consumed with himself to appreciate the world around him. This theme of transformation is central to many Greek myths. Take, for example, the story of Daphne, who was transformed into a laurel tree to escape the advances of Apollo. Narcissus, too, was transformed, but unlike Daphne, who sought escape, Narcissus was trapped in a cycle of his own making. His transformation into a flower wasn't just about punishment, it was about the realization that, in the end, the beauty he had cherished had no substance. It was empty, fleeting, and impossible to grasp. Historians and mythologists have long debated the true meaning of these transformations. Was it an act of divine intervention meant to punish Narcissus, or was it a more subtle form of teaching, a way of showing that obsession with beauty and self-image leads to nothing more than emptiness? In many ways, it seems that Narcissus's flower represents the ultimate consequence of vanity, a beautiful, yet unattainable existence, devoid of real meaning or connection. But there's also an intriguing thought that emerges from the flowers that bloom every year. Each time Narcissus's tale is retold, the story grows, adapts, and resonates with a new generation. It's as if the gods have woven a timeless truth into this myth: the more we gaze into the mirror, the less we see. The more we fixate on our own image, the less we can appreciate the world outside of ourselves. And just as Narcissus was cursed to love only what he saw in the water, we too risk falling into the same trap if we become too absorbed in our own reflections. Now, let's bring it back to the present. In today's world, where social media and constant self-promotion often lead us to compare ourselves to others, the myth of Narcissus feels more relevant than ever. It's easy to get caught up in how we appear, how others perceive us, and how many likes, comments, or shares we can collect. But just like Narcissus, who could never hold on to the love he found in his reflection, we must remember that real connection, real love, comes from beyond the surface. In the pursuit of perfection, we often overlook what truly matters: the relationships we build, the moments of kindness, and the ability to see beyond the mask we wear. Narcissus couldn't see past his own beauty, and in doing so, he missed the opportunity for real love and genuine connection. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this myth is that beauty, whether in ourselves or in others, can only be fully appreciated when we let go of the need for validation. Only then can we see the world and the people in it for what they truly are. And so, with Narcissus's tragic fate still echoing through the centuries, let us remember that the mirror, whether it's the one in our bathroom or the one we hold up to our own souls, should not be a tool of self-obsession, but a tool for self-awareness. We must learn to look beyond the surface, to appreciate the depth of those around us, and to find beauty in the things that matter most. As we continue to reflect on Narcissus's tale, it's hard not to notice the many layers that make this myth resonate in today's world. Narcissus's obsession with his reflection wasn't just about vanity, it was about the disconnect between appearance and substance. He was captivated by something that was ultimately hollow, a beauty that lacked depth. It's a lesson that transcends time, speaking to the core of what it means to be human. In modern times, it's easy to see how Narcissus's story aligns with our own struggles. We live in a culture where appearance often takes precedence over who we truly are. From social media influencers to reality television stars, we're bombarded with images that value perfection and self-promotion above all else. We spend countless hours curating our online identities, constructing a version of ourselves that is perfect in the eyes of others. But, just like Narcissus, we're caught in a cycle, a reflection of what we want others to see, not necessarily what is real. Historians still debate whether Narcissus's self-love was a flaw or simply a byproduct of his environment. After all, ancient Greece was a society that placed immense value on beauty, and Narcissus's physical perfection made him a symbol of that ideal. Yet, despite his outer beauty, it was his inner world that led him to ruin. It's a cautionary tale. Beauty, when it's the only thing that matters, can be a trap. Narcissus's fall was not just a fall from grace, it was a fall into emptiness, a warning to all who would place their worth in their appearance. This myth also touches on another profound idea, the idea that our perceptions of ourselves often define how we interact with the world. Narcissus didn't just love his image, he became consumed by it, unable to step outside the narrow lens of his own reflection. And in doing so, he missed out on everything else, love, connection, and, ultimately, his own life. It's easy to see how this plays out in our own lives. We're so often told that we need to look a certain way, act a certain way, or be a certain way in order to be accepted. We forget that who we are, at our core, has far more value than how we appear on the outside. What's even more interesting is that we, like Narcissus, sometimes mistake our reflections for the real thing. We see ourselves in the lens of others, or in the likes we receive on social media, and we think that is who we truly are. But just like Narcissus's reflection, those outward affirmations can never fill the emptiness within. It's only when we stop staring into the mirror, whether literal or figurative, that we begin to see what really matters: connection, authenticity, and love. The story of Narcissus teaches us that we must not let ourselves be consumed by the reflections in the water. We must learn to look away from the surface and focus on what lies beneath. Just as Narcissus's death left a flower in his place, so too does our obsession with appearance often leave behind something fragile and fleeting. True beauty, real love, can only exist when we accept the whole of who we are, flaws and all. In the end, Narcissus was punished by the gods for his self-obsession, but we too may find ourselves paying a price when we spend too much time admiring ourselves in the mirror. The gods, in their infinite wisdom, left behind the Narcissus flower as a symbol of Narcissus's vanity, but perhaps they also left it as a reminder to us: love, in its truest form, cannot be one-sided. It cannot be a love for oneself alone. To live fully, we must learn to look past the reflection and embrace the world beyond. As we continue to unravel the layers of Narcissus's myth, one aspect stands out more clearly: the deep paradox at the heart of the story. While Narcissus was punished by the gods for his vanity, there's also a profound sense of tragedy in his fate, because, in some ways, he wasn't entirely to blame. His vanity didn't come from nowhere. In ancient Greek culture, beauty was a form of currency. It was celebrated, revered, and often viewed as the highest ideal. Narcissus, with his perfect form, was a living embodiment of that ideal. But what happens when beauty becomes the only thing that matters? Narcissus's story answers that question with painful clarity. In the world that Narcissus inhabited, beauty was his greatest asset. It wasn't just something that people admired, it was the source of his identity. He didn't need anyone else because he had everything he needed, his beauty. The gods, seeing his growing arrogance, decided to strip him of the very thing that defined him. But they didn't just take away his beauty, they gave him a mirror, one that trapped him in an endless cycle of self-admiration. They took something that was once his greatest strength and turned it into his downfall. It was a cruel, ironic punishment, to love oneself endlessly, but to never truly have that love returned. In today's world, the myth of Narcissus feels even more relevant. Social media, with its constant stream of curated images and selfies, mirrors the story of Narcissus in ways that would make the ancient gods nod in approval. Just like Narcissus, we are often encouraged to present only the most perfect, polished versions of ourselves. We are trapped in a cycle of self-validation, constantly seeking approval from others, while never truly satisfying our deeper need for connection. It's as though we're all staring into a pond, expecting to find something real, but only seeing an image of what we want others to think of us. The question arises, is it possible to love ourselves without becoming consumed by that love? Can we find balance in a world that constantly encourages us to look at ourselves and seek validation? Narcissus's story doesn't give us a clear answer. It simply shows us the dangers of obsession, the consequences of putting too much weight on appearance, and the emptiness that comes from loving something that can't love us back. One of the most painful aspects of Narcissus's tale is that he never understood the true nature of love. His love for his own reflection was based on an illusion, an image that existed only in his mind. He could never touch it, never truly hold it. It was a love that existed only in his desire, not in reality. And this is the most tragic part of all. Narcissus, in his quest for love, failed to realize that the love he sought could never be found in a reflection. He had everything he needed, but he couldn't see it. Historians still debate whether the gods were right to punish Narcissus, but perhaps the most important lesson here is that his story is a reflection of our own lives. We live in a world that values external appearance, whether it's through social media profiles or public personas. We are constantly told that self-love and self-acceptance are the keys to happiness. But Narcissus teaches us that there's a fine line between healthy self-love and destructive narcissism. It's important to acknowledge the value of self-love, but Narcissus's story warns us that when it becomes obsessive, it leads only to isolation and emptiness. It's not the love for ourselves that's harmful, it's the refusal to look beyond that love and engage with the world around us that makes it so. True love, true fulfillment, can only come when we step away from the mirror and connect with others, when we learn to appreciate what lies beyond the surface. As we continue through the layers of Narcissus's myth, it becomes clearer that his tale speaks to the very heart of human nature. What makes this myth so enduring is its universality, its ability to resonate not just in ancient Greece, but in our lives today. Narcissus's obsession wasn't just about his outward appearance, it was about his inability to see beyond himself. His story serves as a powerful reminder that self-absorption, no matter how beautiful the object of our affection, can only lead to isolation. Take a moment to think about how we, as a society, view self-worth today. Narcissus's obsession with his reflection is echoed in our modern fixation with self-image, whether that's through social media, the pursuit of perfection, or the constant comparison to others. We are living in a world that often emphasizes appearance over substance, and like Narcissus, we can easily become lost in a cycle of self-validation. But Narcissus's downfall wasn't just about his vanity, it was about his inability to connect with the world outside of himself. He had everything he could ever want, admiration, beauty, and even love from those around him. Yet, his inability to step outside of his reflection meant that he lost everything of true value. In the myth, Echo's unrequited love was the most poignant casualty of all. Echo was the person who could have connected with Narcissus in a meaningful way, but his self-obsession left no room for her, or anyone else, to reach him. He loved only what he saw, and in the end, it wasn't enough. This is a lesson that has withstood the test of time. True connection can only come from a willingness to look beyond ourselves, to reach out to others and to recognize that there's a world full of experiences, emotions, and relationships that exist outside the bubble of our own desires. Narcissus was doomed because he couldn't see past the surface of his own reflection. And that inability to engage with the world beyond him is the true tragedy of his story. The gods, in their wisdom, created Narcissus's punishment to match his flaw. They didn't destroy him physically or kill him in battle. Instead, they gave him the ultimate form of love, a love that was always out of reach, one that was reflected in a still pond and could never be truly possessed. His fate was not to be destroyed by an external force but to be trapped in a cycle of longing that could never be fulfilled. And as he wasted away by the water's edge, a flower grew in his place. The Narcissus flower, delicate and unreachable, symbolizes everything that Narcissus lost, his connection to reality, his chance for love, and his life. But the lesson doesn't end there. Narcissus's transformation into the flower is a striking reminder that beauty, when it's left unchecked and consumed by vanity, ultimately becomes a symbol of loss, rather than something to be celebrated. His beauty, so admired by others, now lives on only as a fleeting, unreachable symbol. The flower may be admired, but it can never love back. It cannot touch, it cannot hold, and it cannot give in return what it represents. And so, it stands as a silent reminder that beauty without depth is hollow. Historians still debate the symbolic meaning of Narcissus's transformation. Was the flower an act of divine cruelty, or was it a form of justice? Was it the gods' way of ensuring that Narcissus's beauty, which had defined him, would now serve as a lesson for future generations? Either way, the Narcissus flower endures, a reminder that beauty, when left unchecked, can fade into nothing but an empty symbol. Narcissus's story is timeless because it speaks to the human experience in a way that feels just as relevant today as it did in ancient Greece. It reminds us that we must be careful of the trap of vanity, of getting lost in our own reflections. It encourages us to look beyond the surface, to seek connection, and to remember that true love comes from the ability to give, not just to receive. In a world that often seems obsessed with the way we look and the image we present, we must ask ourselves, are we truly connecting with others? Are we looking beyond ourselves to the world around us, or are we simply lost in our own reflection? Like Narcissus. As Narcissus's tale unfolds, it becomes clear that his story is more than just a cautionary myth about vanity, it's a profound commentary on the human condition. Narcissus wasn't simply punished by the gods for being beautiful, he was punished because he failed to recognize the deeper layers of life. His vanity wasn't the root of the problem, it was the way he responded to it. He became consumed with his own reflection, so obsessed with his outward appearance that he lost sight of the world around him. This is where the myth begins to speak to us, even today, as we too often prioritize superficial things over deeper connections. In the world Narcissus inhabited, beauty was everything. In Greek society, appearance was a powerful currency, one that granted you status and admiration. Narcissus, with his stunning features, had the world at his feet. Yet, in his search for love and admiration, he ignored the one thing that truly mattered: real, meaningful relationships. His obsession with his reflection made him blind to the affection of others, including Echo, who watched from the sidelines, desperate for a connection that could never be. This inability to see past his own image ultimately led to his destruction. He was a man who had everything: beauty, charm, admiration. But he never realized that true love isn't something that can be found in a mirror, it's something that comes from giving, from sharing, from seeing beyond yourself. Narcissus's tragedy is not just that he loved himself, but that he loved himself to the exclusion of all else. His self-absorption was so intense that it left no room for others, for connection, for depth. Historians still argue over whether Narcissus's downfall was truly his own fault or if it was the result of divine intervention. The gods, in their wisdom, punished him by giving him exactly what he wanted, a perfect reflection of himself. But in doing so, they trapped him in an endless cycle of desire and self-obsession, a cycle that would eventually lead to his demise. The god's punishment wasn't a traditional one, it wasn't a matter of being struck down by thunder or cast into the underworld. It was more subtle, more poetic. Narcissus was punished with love, love for something he could never possess. And in many ways, this is the ultimate lesson of the myth. We all seek love, recognition, and validation, but when we place all of our value in external factors, our appearance, our social media presence, our status, we risk losing what truly matters. Narcissus's downfall was not just his vanity, but his inability to see beyond the surface. He could not comprehend that real love comes from connection, from vulnerability, and from the ability to look beyond the mirror and see others for who they truly are. As the myth progressed, the gods gave Narcissus his final punishment, a transformation into the narcissus flower, forever blooming at the sight of his death. It was as if the gods were saying, "Here is your beauty, your vanity, preserved forever, but it will never be enough. It will never be touched. It will never give you what you truly need." The flower, beautiful yet unreachable, is the ultimate symbol of Narcissus's futile longing. It blooms year after year, a reminder that beauty without depth is fleeting and hollow. Today, we still see echoes of Narcissus's story in our modern world. We live in an age of constant self-promotion, where image and appearance often take precedence over substance. Social media platforms encourage us to present a curated version of ourselves, carefully selecting moments to share with the world. We've become obsessed with the like, the comment, and the follow, as if these digital reflections of ourselves could validate our worth. But just like Narcissus, we risk losing ourselves in these reflections, trapped in a cycle of self-obsession that leads to isolation and emptiness. Narcissus's myth serves as a stark reminder that beauty, whether physical or digital, can only take us so far. It can never replace the need for real human connection, for vulnerability, for authenticity. We must be careful not to fall into the trap of self-validation, to not let our value be defined by how we appear to others. True love, true connection, comes from looking beyond the surface, from seeing others and ourselves with clarity and depth. So, as we reflect on the story of Narcissus, let it remind us to step away from the mirror, to look beyond the reflection, and to find beauty not in what we see, but in what we give. Love, after all, is never about admiration for oneself, it's about the willingness to connect, to share, and to see beyond the surface. Narcissus's tragedy is our opportunity, to learn from his mistakes and embrace the deeper aspects of life. As we near the end of Narcissus's tale, we're left with one lingering thought: how much of his story can we see in ourselves? The ancient Greeks told stories to teach moral lessons, to remind us of our flaws, and to guide us toward wisdom. But even though these myths are ancient, their lessons still resonate today. Narcissus, despite his beauty, was a tragic figure, a man who had everything but failed to grasp the one thing that mattered: connection with others. His beauty and the admiration of others weren't enough to fulfill him. He needed more, he needed to see beyond the reflection in the water, beyond himself. This is the crux of the story: Narcissus's downfall wasn't just his vanity, it was his inability to look beyond himself. When we become too focused on our own image, we lose sight of the people around us. Narcissus's love for his own reflection left no room for anyone else, including the nymph Echo, who loved him so deeply but was left heartbroken in the shadows. Her tragedy was not just that she was ignored, but that her love was unspoken, locked away behind the curse that prevented her from expressing herself. The gods, in their own way, sought to teach Narcissus a lesson, but their punishment wasn't just about vanity. It was about a deeper truth, that love, when it is all about self-interest, becomes empty. Narcissus could not see that real love comes from mutual connection, from giving and receiving in equal measure. Instead, he was trapped in an endless loop of desire for something he could never have, just as we sometimes find ourselves caught in cycles of self-promotion and validation. Historians still debate whether Narcissus deserved such a harsh fate. After all, he wasn't evil. He wasn't cruel. He simply became trapped in his own self-image. But perhaps that's the point. His story shows us the danger of focusing too much on how we're seen and not enough on who we truly are, both to ourselves and to others. It's a lesson about balance, about the importance of seeing beyond our own reflection to recognize the value of those around us. Narcissus's transformation into the narcissus flower is one of the most poignant parts of his story. The gods didn't destroy him. They didn't throw him into the underworld or send him to a fiery abyss. They turned him into a flower, something beautiful, yes, but unreachable. This transformation is symbolic. It's as if the gods were telling him, you wanted to be admired. You wanted beauty. Here it is, but you can never touch it, never feel it, never experience it fully. The flower blooms year after year, just as the myth continues to echo through history, reminding us of the dangers of obsession with self. As we look at the narcissus flower, we see something fleeting and fragile. It is beautiful, yes, but it doesn't last. It can be admired, but it can't be touched. This is the legacy of Narcissus, a symbol of beauty without connection, love without fulfillment. His story serves as a reminder that, no matter how much we long for admiration or validation, it can never replace the deeper, more meaningful relationships that give life true richness. In our modern world, where the pressure to maintain a perfect image is greater than ever, Narcissus's story is as relevant as it was in ancient Greece. We live in a culture where social media profiles, likes, and comments often define our sense of worth. We chase after the approval of others, thinking that validation will fill the emptiness inside. But just like Narcissus, we risk missing out on what truly matters, the ability to love and be loved, to connect with others on a deeper level. Narcissus's myth teaches us that self-obsession, when taken too far, isolates us. It creates a barrier between us and the world, leaving us with nothing but an image of who we think we are, rather than who we truly are. And so, as we think about Narcissus, his reflection, and the flower that bears his name, let's ask ourselves, what are we chasing? Are we, too, getting lost in our own reflections, seeking validation from others without ever reaching beyond the surface? Narcissus's story shows us that beauty and self-love are important. But they are not enough. True fulfillment comes when we look beyond ourselves, when we see others for who they are, and when we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, flaws and all. Narcissus's tale, as tragic and poetic as it is, continues to resonate for one simple reason: it reflects the very human experience of love, self-image, and the pursuit of fulfillment. We all, in our own ways, seek love and validation. It's natural, it's human, and it's part of our desire to feel seen and appreciated. But, as Narcissus's story illustrates, the path to true love, whether it be for ourselves or for others, is not found in the reflection of the mirror. It's found in something much deeper, something that can't be captured in the surface image. As we look at Narcissus's transformation into a flower, we're reminded that beauty can be fleeting, and when it becomes the sole focus of our lives, it can easily turn into a trap. Narcissus spent his final days staring into the water, captivated by what he saw, but that very beauty, so perfect, so flawless, was also his undoing. The narcissus flower, while beautiful, is unattainable. It's a visual reminder of a love that could never be fully realized. His fixation on the reflection wasn't just destructive to him, it was destructive to his capacity to connect with the world around him. He was caught in a cycle of longing, unable to break free. The story of Narcissus invites us to think about the cycles in our own lives. We all have things that we long for, things that we wish we could have or experience. But sometimes, in the pursuit of these desires, we forget that what truly matters isn't the image we project or the admiration we receive. It's the people we love, the relationships we build, and the ways we connect with the world around us. Narcissus's fixation on his own beauty wasn't just about vanity, it was about his inability to understand that love, in its truest form, is about connection, not admiration. It's about being seen for who you are, not just for what you appear to be. As the story of Narcissus unfolds, we see the gradual unraveling of his identity. The beauty that he once held so dear began to decay, just as his soul did. He didn't die a grand, heroic death, he died alone, by the water's edge, entranced by his reflection. The transformation into the narcissus flower didn't mark the end of his story, but rather a continuation of the cycle. The flower bloomed year after year, its petals fragile and fleeting, reminding anyone who gazed upon it of Narcissus's vanity and his tragic fate. In many ways, this flower represents more than just the beauty that Narcissus once possessed. It represents the dangers of getting trapped in an illusion, of loving something that can never love you back. Narcissus never understood that the reflection in the water wasn't real, it was just an image, a fleeting vision of perfection that would never be able to fulfill his desires. And yet, he never stopped chasing it. He died without ever realizing that love, in its truest form, comes from looking beyond the surface, beyond the reflection, and seeing the world and others for what they truly are. The narcissus flower lives on, both in nature and in the myth, as a symbol of what happens when beauty and self-love are taken to extremes. It's a gentle reminder that while self-love is important, it can never replace the deep, meaningful connections we need with others. The true beauty of life is found in relationships, in the ability to love and be loved without the need for constant validation or admiration. Narcissus's story invites us to reflect on our own desires, on the ways we look for fulfillment, and on the importance of seeing beyond ourselves. As we drift off to sleep tonight, let's carry with us the lesson of Narcissus. We don't need to chase after fleeting reflections or admire ourselves from afar. True fulfillment comes when we can look beyond the mirror and connect with the world and the people around us. It's not the image that matters, it's the love we give and receive that makes life truly beautiful. Let the story of Narcissus remind us to never lose sight of what truly matters. As we reach the final moments of Narcissus's story, it's time to reflect on everything that his myth represents and what it teaches us. This tale, woven through the fabric of Greek mythology, reminds us of something we may often forget in our fast-paced, image-driven world, that self-love and vanity can only carry us so far. Beyond the surface, beyond the reflection, is a deeper truth that we must learn to embrace. Narcissus was a man who had it all: beauty, admiration, everything he could ever want from the world around him. Yet, it wasn't enough. His beauty, while captivating to others, was his downfall because it became the sole focus of his existence. He couldn't see beyond it. He couldn't understand that love, true love, is not an image or a reflection. It's about connection. It's about seeing others for who they truly are, and allowing ourselves to be seen in return, not just for what we project, but for our depth, our vulnerability, and our imperfections. The myth of Narcissus serves as a warning. It reminds us that the pursuit of self-validation, while natural, can become an all-consuming obsession. The mirror, whether literal or metaphorical, can be a powerful tool, but when we become too fixated on the image we see, we risk losing sight of what truly matters. In Narcissus's case, his obsession with his own reflection led him to miss the love of others, including Echo, whose silent devotion was a tragedy in itself. As we think about Narcissus's transformation into a flower, we see not only the consequences of vanity, but also the fragility of beauty. The Narcissus flower blooms year after year, beautiful but unreachable, just like the love Narcissus sought in his own image. His beauty became a symbol of emptiness, a constant reminder that love, when based solely on external appearances, can never be truly fulfilling. But there's a glimmer of hope in this myth. The story of Narcissus is ultimately a call to look beyond ourselves, to step away from the mirror and engage with the world around us. It's a reminder that true love, real connection, and lasting fulfillment are not found in the reflection we see of ourselves, but in the relationships we build, the love we give, and the understanding we share. Narcissus's story isn't just about vanity, it's about the need for balance. It's about recognizing that we are more than our appearances, more than the validation we seek from others. It's about learning to love ourselves in a healthy way, and in doing so, opening ourselves up to the love of others. As we wind down from Narcissus's tragic tale, let's take a moment to reflect on how we view ourselves in the world today. Do we, like Narcissus, sometimes get caught up in our own reflections, forgetting to look beyond the surface? Are we so focused on how we appear to others that we miss the deeper, more meaningful connections that surround us? The myth of Narcissus challenges us to think about our own desires, our own self-worth, and the ways in which we seek validation. It's a reminder that true beauty is not about perfection, it's about authenticity, connection, and love. Now, as you settle in, let go of any worries about how you look, how you're perceived, or whether you measure up to some ideal. Let this story of Narcissus be a gentle whisper in your ear, reminding you that your worth is not defined by a reflection in the water or by the opinions of others. Your true beauty lies in the love you give, the connections you make, and the life you live beyond the surface. As you drift into sleep tonight, remember, you are enough, just as you are, without needing to seek validation or admiration from anyone but yourself. Like the narcissus flower, you are beautiful, but your true beauty is far more than what can be seen with the eyes. It's the depth of your heart, the kindness you show, and the love you share that truly matters.